One chance, one life, one take. Little room for mistake. Who do you
Welcome to the Dead Funny, Dead Serious podcast series, 30 End-of-Life Doulas in 30 days. My name is Mitzi. I'm your host for this series. Today, our End-of-Life Doula that is joining us is Sabrina Singh. She's joining us from the UK. Sabrina, welcome to...
Thank you, Mitzi. Yeah, it's great to be here. I really appreciate it.
Great. It's great to have you. So we are going to dive right in to your why. I mean, why did you become an end-of-life doula?
Yeah, thanks. Gosh, I mean, I get this question all the time. As you can imagine, people are, lots of people sort of look at me and think, what is she doing? But I'll tell you, my journey starts out by, my background has nothing to do with end-of-life care, really. Previously, I worked in fashion and most recently in global events, specifically sourcing merchandise, distributing them at events like the Olympics and the World Cup. So really completely just not in this realm at all. But as I turned 40, I started to think about service to self versus service to others. And I was starting to look for volunteer organizations that I wanted to give back to. And I was drawn to the idea of working in hospice care. There was something about being in that space that didn't seem at all, uncomfortable for me. So when I started to look into where I could volunteer my time, I was also chatting to a friend of mine who was a birth doula. And she mentioned that end-of-life doulas were a thing. And that was relatively... that was only about a year and a half ago. So it's still very much a new concept. But once I heard about it, it was like time stopped and I did a deep dive into what that looked like, how I could train. And, I just knew that there was no looking back. I think if anybody had ever asked me what I was, what I would like to do if I wasn't doing the work I was doing, I always said I was drawn to nursing, but I never pursued it. So I think there was something that didn't seem like the right fit. So when this came along, it was like, yes, this is what I've been looking for. And it was a natural thing for me to move on to training. The other thing I'll say is that when I started, my intention was always just to do the training so I could really service friends and family and have a better understanding about how to talk about death and dying in a safe and supported way. I figured if I enjoyed the program, perhaps I would become a doula like full time or really look at that as a career for myself. But I didn't give, I had no expectations of what I would do after I did the training. But of course, on day one, I was like, yes, this is everything I was looking for and didn't even know I was searching.
Yeah. Wow. What a great journey into doing the work. So you said you wanted to help with friends and family. When or has it transitioned into a business model?
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'd say, so once I knew that I wanted to carry on doing this and find ways that I could, do it as a profession. I'd say I finished my course. I can tell you more about who I trained with and things, but I finished my course in March of last year. And like any new business, I think the majority of people that I worked with out of the gate were friends and family. And then that graduated to word of mouth and sharing it with those that they knew and, recommendations that were through my friends and family.
Great. Yeah, I think that's really important information for folks to know, is that we kind of graduate into starting with those that we know, and then it's word of mouth and getting more comfortable with the fact.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. As I've grown an online presence, there has been more interests that have come through, the website where I trained, I'm featured there. And then, I've also partnered with a few other local organizations like funeral directors who have, promoted my services and things like that. But initially, like any new business, I really do think it does start sort of on a grassroots level through people that know.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about your training, and then also then kind of go into the partnerships with the funeral homes? And
Yeah. So there were a few groups in the UK that offer end-of-life doula training. I looked into all of them, and I recommend anybody who is potentially looking into this work to do the same. There are a lot of great programs out there. At the time, it was I was able to do an in-person training. So I went with that. Now I think it's great that there are virtual trainings all over the world. And how wonderful is that we can, extend our education and our reach. But I chose a program that really spoke to me in terms of what they covered within the course materials. It seemed like it was a good balance between the real meaty practical stuff that doulas will do in terms of advanced care planning and really having a foundation of what I need to know when it comes to, serving families at end of life. But it also touched on, which I think is extremely important, the mindfulness, lots of more spiritual aspects at, vigiling, companionship, creating a sacred space. So it struck the right balance in terms of what it offered. I trained with a company called Soul Companions. I really recommend them. And what I think was the best bit about it was that at the time I trained with there were 4 other women. So there's 5 of us in total that trained together. And they've become such an immense amount of support, just as I embark on this work, and so many moments where you feel doubt, and they've just been there to sort of lift me up and reassure me. And, whenever I need advice, I know exactly who to turn to. So I think, when it does come to some of the virtual training, perhaps you want to look at a program that still has a way to stay connected with other people who are training similarly at the same time. Because I do think that's really valuable as you embark on the work itself. It's great to have a network that you can rely on.
Absolutely. It kind of clarifies that you work independently, not so much in a collective, but you do have this group of networked doulas.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. And I have to say as well, as I've been doing this for just over a year now, I've found an immense network within just social media. So like the other doulas that I've met on Instagram, I mean, there's like so much support, and as terrible as this pandemic has been, we all try to find the silver lining in things. And that has been one of them. Just the global reach and being able to connect with other people, I think has been really great.
Yeah. We met on Instagram, right? So
yes, we did.
And here we are. So, we are recording this in March of 2021. You trained and you did your work, and it finished in March of 2020. And we all know what ensued then. So it's been a year. What's it like getting clients during a pandemic? And what have you done in the last year that's been useful?
Yeah.
Not useful.
That's a great question. Well, I'll say I finished my program in March, and it was over a period of months. So I started in October. There were a lot of in-person, we met weekly, like for 1 week a month, each month until March, and we did some self-study. So it was quite in depth. And I was so green and excited to start doing the work come March. And of course the pandemic hit. So my heart sank, and I couldn't see a way that I could do this work in a meaningful way virtually. But I have to say that I've surprised myself in that I do think you can. I think all of us have had to adapt, and this is just one way we, doulas have as well, is, still providing virtual support can be extremely meaningful, extremely helpful to the families. And of course, my purpose, I think, really is to try to empower families and people who, are caring for loved ones to be able to feel confident in doing it on their own. So it's mostly, I still think there's very much, it's very possible to do it virtually. I will say I haven't had the experience of sitting bedside with someone as they're dying still yet. The UK is still in some version of lockdown. Our essential retail is open, but nothing else is. So, we don't have the luxury of sitting with people at the end of their lives. And, I look forward to the day that I can, because I just don't think that there's anything that can replace that. Really, just being in someone's physical presence is so important. But here we are, and I think we've done the best we can. I would think that most doulas would say that it's been a challenging year in that way, but we still are able to be of service.
Excellent. I think that's a great point, is that the virtual work is also lending a hand almost in helping families do it themselves. And so going forward, we're going to have this hybrid model when we can kind of do both things, and it's kind of brilliant. So people in all different countries can have your help virtually, right? If you're a good fit. And then also in England, in London, you could be right there for those families as well.
Yeah. I mean, I always envisioned that it would be community-based work, but I think I had touched on this when we were just before this podcast recording, that, my network, because I've worked in global events, is global. And so what that has meant is that I've been able to be there for, and help walk people through this experience who are in the UK, who are in Japan, South Africa, Canada, etc. So that's been a really beautiful experience, in fact, because, I'm able to use sort of my background and all that brings to the table and to this work as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I think that's going to roll in. I'd love to share a little bit about your global event background. And you explained it a little bit as East meets West. Can you say more? Because I think that's really important.
Yeah. So, no, thanks. So my mother is Lithuanian, and my dad, he died last summer, not related to COVID, but of course the pandemic affected how we could, if we weren't, bedside until he was in hospice. But anyway, separate story for another day. Really what I'm trying to say is, like, growing up, having that sort of East meets West background has given me sort of a foundation to be open and to be curious about different religions, cultures. I've always felt really comfortable in cities like New York and London, which is where I've spent the majority of my adult life. Like, I really thrive on just getting to the root of understanding people and who they are and what makes people who they are. So again, I can't really speak to how that translates directly into my work, but it certainly plays a part. And I think what's nice is that I'm able to find ways to relate to sort of everybody, if that makes sense. Even having I've worked in Brazil, I've worked in Russia, I've worked in Korea, I've worked in Japan, and at every in every experience, it's like you find ways to connect with people on a human level. And what is a greater, leveler than death? So, I don't know. I just think in some ways it's brought an extra layer of depth to the work that I'm doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cultural experiences are very different when it comes to death. So just even understanding that there's differences, but that we can understand each other in humane ways and in human ways as we're experiencing that. I think that's an important piece that sometimes when we're living in it used to be a bubble, right? We used to be like, oh, it's a community-based work, but now with virtual worlds, like, we're reaching further and further in social media. So it's good to have that understanding that, people are coming from us with all different experiences,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, any doula will tell you that, there's nothing about our personal experience that, we bring to the table in terms of like, we meet people where they are, right? So we don't put our faiths or our ideals onto anybody. But I think having a general understanding of, how, or like an appreciation of different cultures is certainly helpful, when it comes to just sitting with people and just seeing them and, just really connecting. I think it's really important.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a level of curiosity that, adds to that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. I just love humans and hearing their stories and
yes,
all across the board. Amazing. So what, as we're rounding this corner and we're going of COVID, what are your hopes for both the End-of-Life Doula, genre and your own business?
Yeah, thanks. So firstly, I hope that doulas become a household name. I hope at some point, I hope that everyone gets to the point where they want one when it comes to their, end of life. And I just, there are so many people that reach out to me and they say, I'm curious in doing this work. And every single time I say, if it's something that you're feeling called to do, by all means, explore it, do it. There's all like the law of abundance. There will always be enough work to go around. There's just not, there's never going to be not enough hands that should be helping in this way. So I very much hope that it becomes a mainstream idea. I think we're still very much on the cusp of it becoming one. So it's exciting to be part of that movement, but I'm looking forward to that. And I also am hopeful that as a society, we start to open up the conversation more about death and dying. I'm seeing it change, but we still have a lot of work to do. And I think I'm excited again to be part of that, changing view in Western society. In terms of my business, I think my intention still stays the same. If I can be of service to people who, need support at end of life and in any capacity, I would love for it to be something that I could do full time. At the moment, I'm still doing some work in marketing and global events, but I do hope that there comes a day that, this could be something that I'm doing full time. And I do see it changing. I can see it going in that direction. Absolutely 100%. So that's really encouraging.
Yeah. Oh, I like those hopes. I share those hopes with you. So
yes. Thanks, Mitzi.
You are welcome. Excellent. So just a big thank you for sharing all of that, Sabrina. I think it's really important to start this conversation with the newest new of our doulas, I believe. I think I don't know if we have anybody that hasn't started yet, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
But excellent. Thank you for sharing.
You're so welcome.
So all of Sabrina's information will be in all of the show notes below, so you can find her on Instagram and Facebook. Again, it's Sabrina Singh, coming to you from London, which is amazing. So just again, thanks for making this happen, because I know it's 4:00 your time.
Of course.
We're doing this.
Yeah.
So we didn't do it at midnight.
It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. And, I should say this as well, like anybody who's reached out to me too on Instagram or Facebook, please DM me. I always will speak to you if you ask for my time. If you're curious about getting into this business, I will always give you the time to talk about my experience, any advice I have. I just think it's so important. And the more education we can do in this area, really the better. So, please consider me your friend.
That's so generous of you. Yeah. I consider you a friend. So there we go. I'll call you all the time for questions.
Great. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So thanks again, listeners. If you're enjoying this series, 30 End-of-Life Doulas in 30 days, it would mean the world to us if you hit subscribe or like or leave a review or whatever the heck you want to do. It helps us know to do more of this and make more of these conversations and keep going with this important conversation. And then jump on over to Instagram and TikTok and like us there. And then we get to know you, which is super cool. And that is all for today. We will see you in the next episode.
Thanks, guys.
That will be remembered. That you candlelight